Twits by Roald Dahl. Read by Paul Ewing. Part 4. Hug-tight sticky glue. Once a week, on Wednesdays, the Twits had bird pie for supper. Mr. Twit caught the birds and Mrs. Twit cooked them. Mr. Twit was good at catching birds. On the day before Bird Pie Day, he would put the ladder up against the big dead tree and climb into the branches with a bucket of glue and a paintbrush. The glue he used was something called Hug-tight, and it was stickier than any other glue in the world. He would paint it along the tops of all the branches and then go away. As the sun went down, birds would fly in from all around to roost for the night in the big dead tree. They didn't know, poor things, that the branches were all smeared with horrible Hug-tight. The moment they landed on a branch, their feet stuck, and that was that. The next morning, which was Bird Pie Day, Mr. Twit would climb up the ladder again and grab all the wretched birds that were stuck to the tree. It didn't matter what kind they were. Song thrushes, blackbirds, sparrows, crows, little Jenny wrens, robins, anything. They all went into the pot for Wednesday's bird pie supper. 4 sticky little boys. On one Tuesday evening, after Mr. Twit had been up the ladder and smeared the tree with Hug-tight, 4 little boys crept into the garden to look at the monkeys. They didn't care about the thistles and stinging nettles, not when there were monkeys to look at. After a while, they got tired of looking at the monkeys, so they explored further into the garden and found the ladder leaning against the big dead tree. They decided to climb up it just for fun. There's nothing wrong with that. The next morning, when Mr. Twit went out to collect the birds, he found 4 miserable little boys sitting in the tree, stuck as tight as could be by the seats of their pants to the branches. There were no birds because the presence of the boys had scared them away. Mr. Twit was furious. "As there are no birds for my pie tonight," he shouted, "then it will have to be boys instead." He started to climb the ladder. "Boy pie might be better than bird pie," he went on, grinning horribly. "More meat and not so many tiny little bones." The boys were terrified. "He's going to boil us," cried one of them.
"He'll stew us alive,"
wailed the second one.
"He'll cook us with carrots,"
cried the third. But the 4th little boy, who had more sense than the others, whispered,
"Listen, I just had an idea. We're only stuck by the seats of our pants, so quick, unbutton your pants and slip out of them and fall to the ground."
Mr. Twit had reached the top of the ladder and was just about to make a grab for the nearest boy when they all suddenly tumbled out of the tree and ran for home with their naked bottoms winking in the sun. The Great Upside-Down Monkey Circus. Now for the monkeys. The 4 monkeys in the cage in the garden were all one family. They were Mugglewump and his wife and 2 small children. But what on earth were Mr. and Mrs. Twit doing with monkeys in their garden? Well, in the old days, they had both worked in a circus as monkey trainers. They used to teach monkeys to do tricks and to dress up in human clothes and to smoke pipes and all the rest of that nonsense. Today, although they were retired, Mr. Twit still wanted to train monkeys. It was his dream that one day he would own the first Great Upside-Down Monkey Circus in the world. That meant that the monkeys had to do everything upside down. They had to dance upside down, on their hands with their feet in the air. They had to play football upside down. They had to balance one on top of the other upside down, with Mugglewump on the bottom and the smallest baby monkey at the very top. They even had to eat and drink upside down, and that is not an easy thing to do because the food and the water has to go up your throat instead of down it. In fact, it is almost impossible, but the monkeys simply had to do it, otherwise they got nothing. All this sounds pretty silly to you and me. It sounded pretty silly to the monkeys, too. They absolutely hated having to do this upside-down nonsense day after day. It made them giddy standing on their heads for hours on end. Sometimes the 2 small monkey children would faint with so much blood going to their heads. But Mr. Twit didn't care about that. He kept them practising for 6 hours every day, and if they didn't do as they were told, Mrs. Twit would soon come running with her beastly stick. The roly-poly bird to the rescue. Muggle-Wump and his family longed to escape from the cage in Mr. Twit's garden and go back to the African jungle where they came from. They hated Mr. and Mrs. Twit for making their lives so miserable. They also hated them for what they did to the birds every Tuesday and Wednesday. "Fly away, birds!" they used to shout, jumping about in the cage and waving their arms. "Don't sit on that big dead tree! It's just been smeared all over with sticky glue! Go and sit somewhere else!" But these were English birds, and they couldn't understand the weird African language the monkeys spoke. So they took no notice and went on using the big dead tree and getting caught for Mrs. Twit's bird pie. And then one day a truly magnificent bird flew down out of the sky and landed on the monkey cage. "Good heavens!" cried all the monkeys together. "It's the roly-poly bird! What on earth are you doing over here in England, roly-poly bird?" Like the monkeys, the roly-poly bird came from Africa, and he spoke the same language as they did. "I've come for a holiday," said the roly-poly bird. "I like to travel." He fluffed his marvellous coloured feathers and looked down rather grandly at the monkeys. "For most people," he went on, "flying away on holiday is very expensive, but I can fly anywhere in the world for nothing." "Do you know how to talk to these English birds?" Muggle-Wump asked him. "Of course I do," said the roly-poly bird. "It's no good going to a country and not knowing the language." "Then we must hurry," said Muggle-Wump. "Today is Tuesday, and over there you can already see the revolting Mr. Twit up the ladder painting sticky glue on all the branches of the big dead tree. This evening, when the birds come in to roost, you must warn them not to perch on that tree, or they will be made into bird pie." That evening, the roly-poly bird flew around and round the big dead tree, singing out, "There's sticky stuff all over the tree. If you land on the branches, you'll never get free. So fly away, stay up high, or you'll finish up tomorrow in a hot bird pie." No bird pie for Mr. Twit. The next morning, when Mr. Twit came out with his huge basket to snatch all the birds from the big dead tree, there wasn't a single one on it. They were all sitting on top of the monkey cage. The roly-poly bird was there as well, and Muggle-Wump and his family were inside the cage, and the whole lot of them were laughing at Mr. Twit.